Hey, welcome to Evidence-Based Audio Engineering. This is number 138, Basic Budget Home Studio Setup, Beardo Edition. Okay, so I think the first thing everybody wanted me to have something to say on, and I don't have that much to say on it. There's a lot of videos, a lot of hype this week, a lot of forum posts, everything else about the Universal Audio Volt USB interfaces. Oh man, I cannot talk with these headphones in. Sorry. So let me take a look at these things. So, wow, this thing just pop-up city. I know you guys may not necessarily have a great history with Universal Audio. I don't know about these drivers. These are USB. I was doing a search. I was trying to find out if these were the Secon drivers, the Sycon, whatever. If these were the same USB drivers as everybody else uses, or if they had their own. Again, you know, not to go back 20 years or whatever, but they weren't a company that really struck me for caring much about or being willing to get their drivers going the way they need to. I know I'm trying to dancing around this, sorry. But these are like your audio interface. Looks like it's got mic preamp. Let's see. So there's a Volt 476. Looks like it's got mic preamp or two. Okay, here we go. So there's a Volt 1 with one mic preamp. Looks like a Scarlett Solo kind of deal. A Volt 2, it's like a 2i2 kind of deal. Looks like there's DIs. There's like a vintage switch so that you can put in some analog whatever magic that we speak about on here a lot and don't necessarily believe in. Let me get this thing off for now. Sorry. And there's the 176. It has a 76 compressor for studio quality, clarity, and punch. Now, the idea is this is like an 1176, right? This is a classic compressor that a lot of people pretend to love. A lot of people do love. Even more people say things about it that they have no idea what they're talking about. But it's a very popular compressor. And this one has something like that on there. You press a button and there's a 76 compressor thing. There's a 276 with two of those things. A 476... I don't know if this got four of those things. It's got more. Looks like it's got the same number of mic preamps. So I got a wood edge. You know, I mean, this is a very classy looking thing for vintagey stuff. There's some different, looks like presets for the compressor, vocal, guitar, fast and off. I almost don't want to read what this vintage thing says, but I'm gonna anyway. Produced with best-in-class audio quality. From the team that brought you the game-changing Apollo interface, Volt 476 delivers superior studio sound quality with more character and tone than any USB interface in its class. What's character? How many times are we going to go through this? What the hell is character? What do you mean by character? Best in class? I mean, what is it? Is it flatter than something else? Let's see the numbers. When you say stuff, if you're really talking about quality, well, you know, again, what are we talking about? Flatness of the frequency response, right? The widest bandwidth of the frequency response, distortion and noise. That's really, for the most part, what we're looking at. So, where's those numbers? You know, I don't see any. But so that vintage button, and you know how much I hate that word. Get classic sounds with vintage mic preamp mode. Few sounds can compare to a vintage Universal Audio 610 tube preamp as used to record everyone from Ray Charles to Van Halen. Volt 476 gives you the rich, full sound of this classic UA mic line instrument preamp thanks to its built-in tube emulation circuitry, a UA exclusive. Anyway, looks like, you know, this is probably fine. And as far as I saw, I think the prices weren't ridiculous. So if you really want UA stuff, Let's see, here it is in Sweetwater. The 476 is $369. It's not terribly much more than I just paid for my 4i4s. 276 is $299. You want just the basic Volt 2, it's $189. I mean, you're really in Focusrite price range here. This is may not be bad. And they've got the little bundles just like Focusrite and FreeSonus do, with the mic and headphone set. So, it'd be nice to find out some about these drivers. I'll try and get them onto the round trip latency roundup as quick as I can. Anyway, so let's go on to the meat of this one. And a lot of people were asking me about this video because it had 500,000 views. And I know I see this guy from time to time. It's the channel's called Paul Davids. And I think when I'm looking at guitar stuff, this guy pops up. Trying to remember if there's anything I really remember from him, or if it's just one of those guys that always pops up whenever you do these searches on YouTube. But this one is called Beginner Home Studio Setup and Why Every Musician Needs One. Came out in May. It's got 500,000 views. A lot of comments. We've gone through some of these before where they're just super sketch. So if you wanna build a home studio, there was one with Phil Zio a while back where we really went through a lot of this. Sorry, let me just make sure I don't have. There we go. Sorry. We went through one of these with Phil Zio and I think Joshua Lopez. But chances are, if you need to, buy a decent interface with an ASIO driver, and like we've said so many times, if it's USB, they're pretty much all got the same drivers. Just pick the one that has the functions you need, maybe the loopback system you need. And the computer you already have is probably fine. Get some headphones, get some cheap speakers, get whatever. And, microphones are so cheap now, it's ridiculous. And the DIs that come on these things, we've run the tests. You guys remember that. And they come out fine compared to even the really expensive, like this, I don't know if you guys can see this radial DI here, where the cable's just too short. So you guys that are actually on these things, we've tested up against these. This is like the gold standard, right? So the radial JDI. So anyway, so let's go on with this thing, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get DMCA'd for this. Please don't. Well, we'll just go through this in sections, but let's see.
If you're passionate about guitar, about music, but your desk looks a bit like this, then probably the best investment is to buy more guitars.
All right, so this guy's a Beardo. Never trust a Beardo. I don't know. There's just so many Beardos out there right now. But let's see what he has to say. Not only is he a Beardo, but he's got an accent, so he must be right about everything. Let's see.
Is to set up a nice little home studio. And the best thing, it doesn't have to be too expensive if you do it right. And this isn't only for those that want to make their own music, also for practicing and jamming. It's awesome. Recording.
Yeah, so this guy has a couple points. It doesn't have to be too expensive to build a basic home studio. And it's not just for you guys that are making your own music. It is excellent for practicing for your band or whatever. It is excellent for sharing ideas with your band. It's excellent for learning parts. With a copy of Guitar Pro, an interface, and a DAW, you can figure out exactly where you need work, how to speed yourself up, how to make yourself better. I'm sure there's other ways to do that too, but our students here at the school, they do so much just by plugging into the computer and playing along with Guitar Pro, and they just start smoking it. All right, so let's keep going.
10 layers of guitars, adding drums, bass, keys. Record your guitar for others. Where do you start? What do you need? So let's decorate our little studio. And let's start with the heart of the operation. Okay. These days, almost everyone makes music and records music on a computer. It gives
Okay,
you
so
so much flexibility.
he's talking
And
about,
it's
you know,
definitely the easiest, most
oops, something's really weird with my mouse. Sorry. So he's talking about the first thing you need is a computer. Pretty much everybody's making music on a computer. I think that's true. You can use your iPad or whatever. I wouldn't. You could use your tablet. I wouldn't. You could use your phone. I wouldn't. Just for the basic, easy stuff, use your computer. He's showing that he's got a Dell XPS, so that's a Windows computer. You know, I'm kind of on the Windows side. So don't let anybody tell you need some super expensive Mac. The cheapest, junkest computer you could possibly buy right now with an actual Intel or whatever processor in it absolutely smokes the computers I made hundreds of albums on back in the day. So even the crappiest thing should be more than powerful enough. Just make sure it's got the interfaces that you need, USB or whatever. I mean, we keep talking about Thunderbolt. I'm still not convinced. I know it's probably the future. I know it's PCI on a wire. I know we've had people on to talk about it, but it's never been that confidence inspiring. So, but you know, there are plenty of people doing fine on Thunderbolt. Just make sure whatever it is, you have the interface needed. Like, you know, if you want to run an old PCIe or whatever, make sure you got that. It's going to be hard on a laptop.
versatile approach. And it's very well possible that the Mac or PC you're already using will be perfectly suited for making music. These computers these days are so powerful that if you're starting out, you really don't have to worry.
Yeah, he's making the same point that the computers are so powerful now, you don't got to worry.
Around 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigabytes of storage. And
okay, so he's saying 8 gigs of RAM, mid-range CPU, 128 gigs of storage. That's probably right. You might even have trouble finding 8 gigs of RAM on a computer now. They might come with 16 off the bat. But, you know, 8. We did a lot more with a lot less back in the day. I know the OSs are a lot more resource hungry now, but still, you'd be okay.
And you can easily get started. And this is always a sensitive matter, but I'm a PC guy, a Windows guy, and I happen to be trying out the new MacBook M1 that everyone is raving about.
Okay, so he's talking about Mac and PC. He's telling you don't care. I'm telling you don't
I just
care.
stuck with my good old laptop.
Choose what you got.
So, let's move on.
Okay.
What if you want to record something? It's either going to be a 1/4-inch jack or an XLR cable.
Okay, so when he's saying, so when you go to record something, you probably need the output of whatever you got is probably an XLR or a 1/4-inch. And your standard computer is just going to have like maybe an 1/8-inch jack or something like that. So you're probably going to need an interface. So I think next thing is going to say is interface. So let's see.
And there's no chance I can plug these into my laptop right now. Our computer may have a little input or an onboard microphone, but these aren't really the quality we're looking for. So this is where this comes in.
Okay, so
and
he's
number
pulling out
two,
an
there's
interface.
the audio interface or sound card.
Now this guy's got an RME right here, and it looks like an old, is this an old FireWire RME? Holy crap.
It connects via USB or FireWire, which is
USB
most
or
common.
FireWire.
Although I guess FireWire is becoming a little bit obsolete and slowly moving.
So he's saying, I guess FireWire is becoming a little bit obsolete. Man, it's been hard to find FireWire for a very long time. What was it? The really good Mac with the Texas Instrument chip was like 2005 or 2007. Was that it? The MacBook Pro, the old aluminum one? Yeah, it's been a very long time. I don't know. This guy's crazy. He still's got FireWire. So when he's talking about an old PC, he's talking about an old PC, it looks like. It's an ancient computer if it's still got FireWire. Holy crap. So that's nice. So this, yeah, it's a RME Fireface UCX.
Moves towards Thunderbolt, which has even a larger bandwidth than USB 3.0. But that's only available on select Windows devices, by the way, so make sure to check if your computer accepts it. There's always one or more inputs that can be line level for instruments like keys or your guitar amp mother. It's not on a list, so no worries. Let me put that here, and let's just plug the camper into the sound card. We should see it coming into the computer. Input number 3, and we see it.
Okay, so he's checking.
So apart from the line inputs,
He's checking on total mix. Wow, man, my mouse is just killing me right now. He's checking on total mix.
for these instruments, we also have preamps on board. This makes sure you can run a microphone into it and it will amplify.
So he's showing that, most interfaces are going to have a DI and a mic preamp on it. And, you need a mic preamp because you can't plug your mic into a line level source usually. We've talked about exceptions to that too before, right?
Amplify the signal to a level where the computer actually can work with it. Without it, the mic is way too quiet. As far as the output goes, you definitely need two, left and right, and a headphone output. More outputs is nice if you want to hook some external effects to it, run sound through it and back to the computer. Maybe experiment with different routings and stuff. That's fun.
Okay.
Furthermore,
So he's talking about multiple outputs. For the most part, you really would just want to get started. You just need a stereo pair to get out. You need to be able to hear yourself and whatever you're doing. If you do have more outputs and you want to plug into some analog device for some vintage magic or other nonsense, I would worry about that when you're way further along than right now. So just get the two outputs for now if I were you.
I love to have MIDI in and MIDI out so you can sync all the gear you want to your computer or have the computer.
He's talking about having MIDI in and out. Again, most devices are going to have MIDI over USB, or you can buy a separate MIDI jack interface, which isn't great, but they can work. But if you do have MIDI in and out on your device, that's nice.
Control different instruments and pedals. So now we got a computer, we got the interface. Now what? If you make and play all that beautiful music, you do want to hear it, right? So at number 3, a decent pair of headphones.
Okay, so he's talking about
this
headphones.
This is definitely the easiest way. You don't have to sit in a fancy room. You don't have to mind the neighbors, the kids.
So he's making the acoustic observations. With headphones, you don't have to really make your room super special. You don't really need much treatment. You're not going to get as much environmental noise bothering you, and you're definitely not going to be bothering your neighbors. So it's a handy thing. I'm in headphones right now. I hate them. So it's hard to know.
It's the parents, the dogs, the cats. Nope, just put these on and go from there. I used the Sennheiser HD25 for a long time until they fell apart sort of, and now I got these fancy new ones. And there's a few different types, like there's over-ear or on-ear.
So he said he was using Sennheiser HD25s. Let's see what those ones are. Oh, those are super cheap. $150. Not super duper crazy cheap, but closed back on ear. I don't know. I tend to prefer the over ear ones, but I ride my bike every day with earbuds in. You would think I would finally get along with these things, but I just don't. Maybe I'll try some on air next time. I'll try some like wired earbuds. I got to make some adapters or something for that. It might be a good idea because I really am used to those. I don't hate them as much as I hate these headphones.
These are over ear, and there's open back like this one or closed back, and they all have different benefits and downsides. I like open back for listening and for mixing, and closed back for recording. And I think over ear for me is a little more comfortable. But
okay, so he's talking about open ear and closed ear. And I don't know too much about headphones, so don't take this to the bank. But from what I understand, open ear is going to be able to give you a better bass response because you're not creating a whole series of reflections immediately at the edge of the speaker where the seal would be when in the closed ear. And a closed ear would have, I guess, worse bass response, but much better isolation. And so remember, you're not just talking about isolation of being able to hear yourself and rejecting the outside noise. But another part of the isolation you got to worry about is actually the sound coming out of your headphones and leaking into the mics that you could be using. Classic example of that is drummers who like crazy loud click tracks, and you can hear this beep even through the cymbals and everything. So that's something else to consider. If you really want crazy isolation, I see a lot of people nowadays using earbuds and then putting a set of like construction ear protection. Like they look like headphones, but there's not really any audio wiring or anything in them. They're like construction devices. I mean, you see them at construction workers for hearing protection, and they have a ton of isolation. I think that a couple drum companies are making their own headphones that are really just based on those and have a speaker inside. Okay, so let's keep going.
Personal, so check and make sure which type will suit your needs. Let's just put it in the studio, continue, because we've got the computer, the interface, we've got the headphones. Your first hit is right around the corner, but not quite yet. Here is number 4. And
okay, so number 4.
Let's talk mics.
He's saying, talk about microphones. Okay.
Without a mic, you would not be able to hear me, because over here, right out of shot, I've got a boom mic hanging. It's connected with an XLR cable into the audio interface. A different one, that is. And a mic can serve so many different purposes. It can record your acoustic guitar, your guitar amp,
Okay,
your
so basically
voice,
it's just
or
telling
any
you what
audio source or
microphones
instrument
do,
you can think of.
and that
And I think
if you're
it's
recording
really a
acoustic
must-have,
sources, you need a
and it doesn't have to
microphone.
be too expensive. It can range from $50 to anything up to $2K even. And if you're starting out,
and like we show on this show a lot, you can get a really good mic for really cheap now, right? Really, really, really cheap.
I suggest trying out a few budget options at first. So in general, there's 3 different types. So a dynamic microphone is really classic for live use, but also for loud audio sources like a guitar cab. This is really a classic, the Shure SM57. We've got the dynamic microphone. So this one is a little more sensitive and runs with 48 volts phantom power.
Okay, so he's talking about types of microphones. The dynamic mic, which you probably know from, it's basically a speaker on the end of a stick, like a Shure SM57. You're just using the speaker in reverse. That would be a dynamic mic. Pretty much every mic you normally see on a drum set. I mean, there are condenser mics. I use condenser mics on the cymbals and things, but in general, things that are going to have really high sound pressure level, you're probably going to use a dynamic. And the next thing he's talking about is a condenser, though he calls it, again, a dynamic in this video. And he's showing a really expensive Neumann, but like we've shown, there's some super cheap mics out there that are really good right now, condenser-wise. And he's probably third, he's probably going to say ribbon.
The cable into the microphone. And this works well for anything, quiet, loud, they do it all. Acoustic guitars, vocals, and even guitar cabs or drums. Lovely. And then there's a ribbon mic. So they are a little less bright and have a more...
if you're a noob, not even if you're just a noob, but in general, I would just stay away from ribbons. I mean, you're going to be able to do pretty much... Oh man, here goes my credibility again. You're going to do pretty much what you want with the dynamic or a condenser mic. And honestly, you can do pretty much anything with a condenser. I know you can do anything with the 57. You know, Robo did that album where he did everything with 58s. But in general, large diaphragm condensers, especially if they're multi-pattern, but you know, even if they're just cardioid, you can pretty much do anything you need to do. There's better mics. Like I use small mics that pick up the toms better and reject the cymbals better than a normal large diaphragm condenser might. But you know, these are all tiny subjective things. Sometimes not so tiny, but they are quite subjective.
More mellow sound due to the little bit rounded off transients, so they are more smooth. And I like to pair this one up with a condenser or a dynamic mic, so it gets you the best of both worlds.
Just saying there's not as much transients on the ribbon mic, so they call it smooth. I'm scared of those kind of words, but you know what we're talking about.
And I made a video on a cool recording technique I like to use on the acoustic guitar, so you can check it out over here. So there's a whole study you can do about mics, like different pickup patterns, small diaphragm or large diaphragm. For now, I guess if you just want to use one microphone, I suggest getting a large diaphragm condenser mic. And
So you're saying if you want to use just one mic, just buy a large diaphragm condenser mic. And I can't fault him. You know, that MXL stuff maybe, I don't know. They still make that MXL? That was like the cheapies back in the day. You know, the Focusrites and stuff, they come with the same kind of thing. They're like these Chinese condenser mics, large diaphragm. Some are electret and not really the standard large diaphragm you'd expect, but any of them work pretty well. I mean, let's be honest. All right.
you're gold. That can do it all. So let's keep that one in the studio. So everything sounds great so far, but I'm forgetting a massive thing right now. Where do we record into? You sure can't use the
Okay, so it looks like part number 5 that he's going to mention is the DAW itself. Let's see.
voice memo app on your computer, right? So we said the heart of the operation is a computer. Now we need something to organize everything on it. At number 5, we find a digital audio workstation.
Yep, so number 5, digital audio workstation.
You know, the loading takes too long. It's a program that runs.
And since he's not using Reaper, it's taken him a while to load up his DAW. So right away you can tell he's not using Reaper, right? Because he's like, oh, it's I got to start it now because it takes a while to load.
It's on the computer, and it lets us record guitars, layer vocals on top, add reverb, delay, EQ, compression, add 8 tracks of drums if you wish. Run.
So you're saying what a DAW does, right? It's your mixer and your multi-track and your effects processor. It's where you record everything. I think you guys already know this, but just in case. And he's saying, you know, this is how you mix. This is how you add all your effects. This is how you store your songs. You know, the DAW is the nerve center of everything, right? And he says you could even add 8 tracks of drums if you want. And you guys that record drums for a living, you know, sometimes we got 13 tracks of drums, sometimes more. I mean, you can go crazy with drum tracks. But, you know, for your budget home setup, you could get your SSD 5 free or whatever drum software you want, and you're probably going to be fine.
On your favorite guitar simulation plugin all at the same time. Really, the sky is the limit. So
It's
here
still loading
you see
up.
Ableton
It's
Live.
Ableton, that's why.
It's coming right up. My personal favorite. And let's see what happens if we just record some guitars.
So he's going to record some guitar.
All right, here we see the guitar track. So now I can also layer a vocal on top with that XLR cable I just showed you.
So he's recorded a vocal track and he's looping it, I guess. That's the cool thing about live. I know I make fun of live, but live does composition so cool in a way. I mean, you could do the same type of thing with Reaper, but it's a different workflow with the live. Now he's saying he's going to add a vocal on top.
Oh, by the way, there's one thing you should never ever forget, and that is to hit that like button. Like button. Gently, gently. Awkward. So we can produce, mix, master, everything you need to make and create music. And there's loads of different programs available. Ableton Live, Logic, FL Studio, Cubase, Reason, PreSonus Studio One. Some shine in different fields.
Man, he didn't mention Reaper. What's wrong with this guy? Mentioned all these DAWs. That's what happens when you have a beard.
Where others may lag a little bit, but ultimately they all sort of do the same thing. So find the program you're comfortable with. So very often a sound card like this will ship with a free.
I like that he calls an audio interface a sound card. I know how mad you guys get at me when I call an audio interface a sound card. So, thank you, Beardo.
Copy of a light version of your DAW.
Saying most interfaces ship with some sort of light version of a digital audio workstation. That's probably true. There is no light version of Reaper, however. So, you know, hey, I don't get paid by these guys anymore, but I'll tell you, if I was going to pick a DAW, and I know we have users of other programs out there, but if you're just starting out, I'd go run Reaper. Unless you absolutely need something that Live gives you. Or, you know, I say they do have their strengths. Logic, I think, is still probably really good for MIDI composers. Sorry, let me go on with this.
So that might be a good choice to get started. So doing everything on headphones is doable.
He's saying he started using the free version of Audacity, and man, I would have killed to have something like that back in the day when I was learning. So even that's not bad. And I think there's other free DAWs out there too. Oh, but yeah, Cakewalk. The new Cakewalk is completely free, right? Cakewalk by BandLab. It's free. It's killer. I mean, I would have murdered to have that thing back then. Maybe there would have never been a Reaper if we had that thing that way back then.
But if you're working for a longer period of time, it can get so intense or uncomfortable. Therefore, at number 6, I think a decent set of studio monitors is essential. They are active speakers that just try to make the sound as balanced and transparent as possible. So your music will sound great, not only on your system, but on each system for everyone. Great.
Okay, so the next one he's talking about is getting a set of monitors. Like I say, like I'm trying to be okay on these headphones right now, and though I really want my monitors back, I just don't want it feeding back through this mic right here.
Or when you play with something like a Kemper or a Helix or a Fractal 2, by the way, if you want to hear yourself nicely. So you plug the cables into the output of the sound card directly into the speaker, and there we are. The size of the monitor should be related to the space where you're using them in. So
okay, so he's also saying this is a good thing to remember. The size of your monitors, don't make them super humongous if you only got a tiny little room. Like Focusrite was going to send us these 8-inch KRK VXTs for this room, and this room is way too small. I think it's like 8 foot wide maybe by 11 deep by not even 8 foot high. I think those speakers would murder. Even the 6s that we have are pretty much murder. So let me go on.
If your space is small, don't go too big. It just makes no sense. We move on. So I know we're probably all guitarists, but music is more than just guitar. So whenever making it, and here's number 7, I think a little USB or MIDI keyboard can be...
Okay, showing for number 7, a keyboard controller, like a little USB one. One that you see a lot, those super cheap Korg micro USB ones. They're just like a little tiny keyboard, little mixer, little sample pad thing. Those are actually remarkably useful. And then they made a newer version that I was actually going to gut in order to make a wireless pedal board out of one of these Behringer FCB 1010s. That one looks pretty good. It's still not too much money. It's still kind of small, though. If you need something bigger, you can always find keyboards for cheap nowadays on Craigslist and stuff. And I mean, really good ones. I guess until the gear shortage lately, but I'm sure there's still some out there. Like even like $25 off Craigslist Casio probably has MIDI out over USB, so you can use this to control everything the way he's talking about. Let's see what he says here.
So helpful. So this is the one I used for the longest time.
So
it's very
he's got a little one like
keys, but it works.
49 key. What is that? It's like 4 octaves, 3 octaves. With modulation controllers on it. Looks pretty handy.
Great. So this allows you to play all the sounds you want in your DAW. It simply connects with the USB cable. So now the things I can do is play piano. Oh, by the way, there's one thing you should never ever forget. Or drums. Hit that like button. Gently,
yeah, one thing
gently.
You can really remember, like, especially for around here with the school, I always tell the parents, if you do have one of these keyboards with the USB out, get your kid on a DAW, get them on the computer, get them learning things, because you can compose the whole thing on it. It's not just for piano sounds. You can control your drum sampler with it. You can control all your synths with it. So plug that thing into your computer. Even if you don't play keyboards, if you run into one of these things, plug it in and try it out. Try playing some drums on it, or I think you'll find some uses for it.
Gently, or strings. Oh, by the way, there's one thing you should never ever forget.
So he's showing how to make like, the whole song out of it.
Like button, gently. So as you heard, whatever you need to finish that banger. And it's so much easier than drawing in MIDI notes, which is just a painstaking exercise.
So you're saying, yeah, use that thing plus your quantizer or whatever instead of drawing in MIDI notes. because I don't know my notes and stuff, it's actually easier for me to draw them in than to play it on the keyboard. But I can actually do some of the drum stuff on there.
So just learn like a bit of the piano basics. It's not that hard, and it's great for everyone to learn. And from there on out, it's just smooth sailing. All right, so we've got most of the essentials down, I guess. But so handy are the things that just make everything a little bit easier. Like at number 8, mic stands.
Okay, so now he's talking about
They
mic
will
stands.
save your life, really.
So my first band, I couldn't really afford a mic stand or anything. I had a traffic cone with a broomstick and a mic taped to the broomstick. So that was my mic stand. And even today, like I'm constantly fighting over mic stands. They get broken constantly. They get stolen. Man, it's nice to have good mic stands. And here in Hawaii, it's really hard to get those giant, heavy ones that you can lift really high and stay put.
I use a short one for guitar amps, a medium one for recording acoustics, for example, and maybe a bigger one for vocals, like standing up. Or if you just want one to do it all, just go for the bigger one and change it so it fits whatever you're tracking. I found that the cheapest ones, even if they do the job, they sort of either break or they don't stay in one place, so they slowly...
Yeah, you say the cheap ones, a lot of times they break or they tilt by themselves. Like you think you tighten them up and then the boom keeps falling.
You drift away and that messes up your recording, of course. So maybe go for one class higher and save yourself some troubles. So we've been using them already, but I just want to share it again because they are so easily forgotten. At number 9, it's cables. So make sure you've got...
So number 9, he's saying cables. Back in the day, and I don't know if this is true anymore, but I just ordered some cables before I started this broadcast, so it's probably still true. But back in the day, people would budget, like, I want this $300,000 console. I want this $40,000 tape machine. I want all of these $5,000 compressors and mic preamps. I want all these $5,000 mics, whatever. They got everything figured out. They didn't talk about patch bays and cabling. The patch bays and the cabling, whatever you got, $1 billion consoles and everything else, you're going to spend more on the cables. I mean, it was, especially the more you spent on the console, the more ins and outs you got, the more you're going to spend on the patch bays. So we're talking about a lot of money in cables. And we've talked about cheap versus expensive cables, and how many times that old adage of you get what you pay for is not true. But you definitely want cables that are well built. You definitely want connectors that are well built. Remember, lots of times you get these female XLR connectors, these cheap ones, and the female ends are so loose that it makes an intermittent connection, which is especially unfun when you're talking about phantom powered devices. So make sure that the connectors are good, the cables are good, depending on what you're doing. Like you can have a hard, crusty, crappy cable if it's going to be something permanently installed or behind walls or whatever. If you're going to be rolling stuff out live all the time, you want something a little bit more supple. It's easier to roll up. You want them reliable. There's nothing like tearing apart a patch bay. You guys are used to 1/4 inches and XLRs, but you may not be used to TTs, which were the smaller connectors of the Pro Studio patch bays. A common patch bay would have 4 rows of 24 connectors in it, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and you would have separate pins on them for normaling, half normaling, all this really complicated wiring that's just so easy to break, and it costs a fortune to make these patch bays and make these cables and stuff. So it can be, the cable side can be expensive, and it is part of your ergonomics and your confidence. You know, if your cables are always giving you crap, like when we were starting this off and I had to wiggle the headphone cable, it's not something that inspires a lot of confidence in you. Anyway, let's see what he has to say about these.
A mix of everything, like USB jacks, XLR cables, also jacks to XLRs for maybe for your speakers, balanced.
He's saying make sure you buy everything. XLRs, 1/4 inch to XLRs, adapters. probably something the length and a 1/4 inch, which is, to me, it's always the hardest one. So I just go and buy a really good cable-ended female 1/4 inch jacks, stereo ones, because I can always, just short them if I need to. But I'll make headphone extenders like that, or 1/4 inch extenders, whatever. But you're saying, make sure you got your USB cables, all that stuff.
Unbalanced. It's the best to connect your mics, your gear, your instruments, your amp modeler. It's difficult to have too many cables, and I found that.
He says it's difficult to have too many cables. He's right. I mean, we do have cables here that we're not using, but they're mostly because they're broken and I need to fix them. If I fixed them, I guarantee I'd put them back into use.
I simply couldn't use something just because I didn't have the right cable or not enough cables. And my goal.
So he's talking about times where he couldn't use something, and this is terrible. We see this even when we're setting up live over here. You didn't have enough cables, so you couldn't add a device or an instrument or a mic or something that you wanted. Right now, for instance, I'm having trouble getting my camera far enough out into the crowd. I tried to use a Ethernet USB extender thing. That didn't work. We're going to try another one, but, there you go.
Always to making music as hassle-free as possible.
So he's talking about his goal is to make music as hassle-free as possible. So when you go out in our big room, you're going to see all those drums they're always mic'd up. They're always ready to go. It'll take me about 5 minutes unless people really wrecked stuff in there. I could have a whole band going in 5 minutes.
That also means having the things by hand you need to hook everything up correctly. So now you're looking at your wallet and you think, you said it doesn't have to be too expensive. And indeed, it doesn't. All the gear I've got in the studio, I mean, maybe you've seen the tour, you can check it out over here, the full studio
now.
tour. It was collected during a period of almost 20 years. So I started...
Remember, you don't have to kill yourself to get everything perfect right now. Hopefully you already have a computer. Hopefully you can afford an interface if you don't have one. After that, just, get the cables you need. Let's worry about, you got headphones that'll work for now, some crappy speakers that'll work for now. As long as you can plug your guitar in, if you have a mic. If you don't have a mic, there's super cheap mics out there. He's talking about how the better stuff he has, he collected it over time. And especially, it's like, I do a lot of bike riding, and if you don't know what parts to change, don't just go changing junk for no reason out of your whatever you got. Over a lifetime of riding 20-inch BMX, I have a pretty good idea of what I want, and I will completely custom build a bike up, and I'll know I need this thing because I break this, or I need this thing in order to fill this function, just like in the studio. And on the other hand, I'm just now learning how to ride a dirt jumper. It's a 26-inch bike, totally different type of thing. And I've pretty much left it stock, except for the weenie-ass chain that came in there that I broke right away. I put a big fat half link on there. And I stuck a pivotal seat on there because the stock one was cutting my legs up. But other than that, I don't know what to break, so I'm just leaving it alone. So don't go spending money you don't need to spend on stuff that you don't understand at first. Wait till you break something and you know what needs to be broken. Just use what you got for now, I think he's saying.
I started out with my hi-fi speakers connected to my old PC using free software called Audacity.
Yeah, so you say use Audacity for free. Use some hi-fi speakers, regular stereo speakers you'll find at Salvation Army or Goodwill or whatever, and just plug it into his interface.
So I bought this audio interface. 4 years ago, I bought this laptop. It's like gradually investing in new gear. A studio isn't built in one day, so upgrade where necessary and add where you're missing things. And the order is different for everyone, where a singer might use a mic from the get-go. If you're a guitarist that records with an amp modular, a direct input or output, you probably can do without it in the beginning. And yes, I said 10 things, and I only listed 9 so far, because number 10 is a sum of all the things you might want to look at if things get serious, like a dedicated studio desk.
So number 10, he's just saying miscellaneous, because, every situation is different, and you don't know what you need. Like I had my friend Tommy build me a custom studio desk that you're looking at right now, actually.
Or getting acoustic treatment in your room, or
acoustic
a pop filter for your microphone.
Pop filters. Well, I think you should if you got a microphone, you should probably get a pop filter right away. Those shields that go behind the mic, I haven't had really good luck with those. I know they could help, but I would probably just buy a big packing blanket or something instead.
Amps, analog recording gear, maybe even a dedicated computer that you can just leave at the desk. Plugging things in and out every time you want to make music can get annoying after time. So
he's talking more
as I
about
said,
ergonomics.
we try to make everything as hassle-free as possible, as quickly as possible. Anyway, of course I can't test everything or every piece of gear around, so I would love for you to give some recommendations. What is good and affordable gear to start out with? Maybe some things I might have missed, or tips about gear that
So this guy's asking for tips from his viewers, his subscribers. This is actually pretty good.
you think others can't live without in the studio. Or if you've got a question, maybe we can all help each other out and answer some questions in the comments below. That would be really awesome to see. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I really do hope this video inspires.
So that was Paul Davids, and he is a Beardo, but this is a pretty good video. This isn't one of those joke ones where it's just some super popular girl who decides she's going to jump in on this thing, and because she's already got 5 billion views, you got 1 million people out there with complete misinformation about how to set up a home studio. This was actually pretty good. Actually, we did one where it was this girl she had an eyelash channel, I think. She talked about how to do eyelashes, and she did an excellent beginning recording setup video. So it's not always that the super hype ones are bad, but usually they are. We've seen some howlers out there, right? But this one is pretty good. He may be a Beardo, but he's talking sense. If you guys got any questions about that, let me know. Otherwise, I'm gonna go. Saturday, I gotta get me some exercise. All right, I'll see you guys later. Let me just stop. Well, I've got to change mice too. All right, I'll see you guys next week.